Countries around the world are facing into another week of soaring temperatures, wildfires and drought as a result of devastating heat waves driven by man-made climate change. Western Europe has had its hottest June to July on record. The European Union's climate change monitoring programme, Copernicus, also says that apart from the polar regions, record high temperatures have been recorded in the world's oceans in July. Here, drought is due to be declared in more parts of England ahead of the fifth heat wave this year. Heat health alerts have been upgraded to amber for most of England, with temperatures expected to get to the mid-30s. And across the Atlantic in Canada, a state of emergency is still in place in British Columbia because of wildfires which have doubled in size since they first started at the weekend. On the other side of the world, winds, rain and flooding are causing havoc. Chinese authorities have evacuated more than 1 million people from their homes in eastern China after Typhoon Dolphin made landfall. It's the strongest typhoon to hit China this year, with winds so strong they could flip this lorry on its side. Astonishing pictures there. Well, let's speak now to Samantha Burgess, Strategic Lead for Climate at Copernicus, the European Union's climate change monitoring programme. Samantha, we appreciate you joining us on BBC News, and really interesting to talk to you as you publish this latest data on the effect of the warming climate. Europe is heating up at around twice the global average. Why is that?
Yeah, that's right. So Europe is warming up twice the global average rate for a number of reasons. One is that land areas are warming up faster than the ocean, and Europe has, it's a very large continent. The second reason is the proximity to the Arctic. So the Arctic is warming up at 3 to 4 times the global average rate. The third reason is changing weather patterns. And the fourth reason is changing reflectivity. So as we have less snow and ice at the end of winter, and we have less sea ice, not only in the Arctic regions, but also in places like the Baltic Sea, we also have less low-level clouds. So we're getting more of that sun's energy absorbing into the land, into the ocean, which is warming up both of them more rapidly.
And does that explain, Samantha, why we are seeing heat wave after heat wave in Europe this summer?
Yes, that's right. So one of the consequences of Europe's warming is we are more likely to get the type of heat waves that we've seen this summer. So heat waves, the weather dynamics have changed, which means we're more likely to get heat waves. When we get those heat waves, they are hotter, they're lasting longer, and they're happening more frequently.
Now, we mentioned as well that the world's oceans, apart from the polar regions, are really heating up to record levels as well. If you combine that with the heating land as well, what is the significance of that?
Yeah, so your report actually covered some of that. So with record high ocean temperatures, it means there's more energy available for storms. So the recent typhoon in China was probably made stronger due to climate change. It also exacerbates the heat waves. So we've seen this in June, July, and early August, that because the ocean temperatures are so high, it means we don't get that relief at night. So we suffer what's known as tropical nights, which means that the temperature stays above 20 degrees, and it's much harder to get to sleep. It's much harder to cool down houses because of those high temperatures at nighttime.
So warming oceans reinforcing what's happening on land as well. And then if we look at the land, the heat and the drought over areas of land, do they reinforce each other as well?
Yes, very much so. So because we've had this number of heat waves, record high temperatures, record low or absence of rainfall, that's really dried out the soils. It's dried out rivers. So we're seeing record low river levels across the major transport routes across Europe, like the Danube, the Seine, and the Rhine. This has implications for energy security. So power plants, nuclear power plants, have to switch off. energy that's being transported through barges and other goods being transported have had to stop because the river levels are too low for those heavy ships to pass through. And it also increases the wildfire risk as well. So with those very dry soils, it means the vegetation is drying out, which therefore increases the wildfire risk. So we have these hot, dry conditions and then a huge amount of available dry fuels. So it's this tinderbox scenario. If you get a spark, then that's what we saw in July, these record-breaking wildfires in France and in Spain.
Samantha, what would you say to the very many people who are incredibly worried about what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, and thinking, what can we do about this?
Yeah, great question. And if you are concerned about this, the most important thing that you can do is talk about it, vote. So if you've got a local election coming up, make sure you're voting for someone who believes the same priority issues that you do, and encourage your local authorities to have heat health action plans to make sure that your neighbours and your vulnerable parts of your community are really have a plan in place to protect them from the heat that we will see to come, not only later this summer, but in the summers to come are likely to be even more intense than this one in a warming world.
Okay, Samantha Burgess, Strategic Lead for Climate with Copernicus. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Now, a very different type of weather, but as we mentioned, and still linked to man-made climate change, a typhoon in eastern China has brought torrential rain and flooding to the eastern part of the country. Our China correspondent Stephen McDonnell has the latest.
Chinese scientists have for years been warning of the increasingly destructive capability of these typhoons, and so, out of an abundance of caution, officials here have moved huge numbers of people to safer areas. In the southern city of Wenzhou alone, many hundreds of people were taken to emergency shelters. But, it's right across the southeast of China and hitting all manner of sections of the economy. I mean, workers off oil rigs brought back to the Chinese mainland, ships ordered back to port, smaller vessels, many hundreds of them in Shanghai, placed inside shelters, 1,500 flights cancelled, and then you also have the potential of a further, disastrous consequences with engineers checking dams and making sure that they're sound. Now, the reason for this is that the last typhoon to hit here resulted in serious flooding. Those floodwaters at times breached dams to deadly effect, killing people downstream as a result. And so you have people out checking building sites, as I say, dams and other structures, making sure that there can't be other secondary disasters as a result of this typhoon.